To the naked eye, Joe Colombo was a businessman, an organizer, a public figure. But beneath the surface, he continued to lead one of New York's most powerful crime families, and he was sworn to a code of secrecy, a code that, if threatened, could cost him his life. As Joe Colombo's public exposure increased, the other bosses looked on uneasily. At the time, Carlo Gambino was the most tenured and respected boss in New York. Gambino and his allies in the Lucchese family had enthusiastically supported Colombo's Civil Rights League in the beginning. But word on the street was that the bosses were having second thoughts, that all the publicity was doing more harm than good. But Colombo was unperturbed. By this point, Joseph Colombo had been boss of a mafia family for 7 years. He had come to power at the end of the Gallo-Profaci War, time of great conflict and uncertainty within the family. But he had successfully steadied the ship. It may have been his strong leadership qualities, or perhaps the fact that the family's biggest troublemaker, Joey Gallo, was stuck in jail. That was about to change, however. Crazy Joe would soon be back on the street, which meant trouble for Joe Colombo. While Joe Colombo and his league members prepared for their biggest rally yet, the Gallo crew down on President Street had other plans.
I hear what sounds like, to me, muted firecrackers. But people don't run from fireworks. People run from gunfire.
As Joseph Colombo is making his way through the crowd, a gunman approaches him and gets off 3 shots. Shoots him 3 times. Colombo collapses to the ground.
With Joe Colombo on life support and his survival unlikely, word began to spread in the underworld.
Then when somebody came and told us that Joe Colombo got shot, a lot of scuttlebutt about, right away that it was a Gallo. What are we gonna do? Who are we gonna reach out to? Go get a gun? What are we gonna do? It was a lot of, chaos.
Now here's the big million-dollar question. Is Jerome Johnson just a lone nut like Lee Harvey Oswald, or is he part of a greater conspiracy? This is, of course, what the mob thinks. And if there's anyone who they can look at and say is responsible for hiring Jerome Johnson to kill Joe Colombo, it's Crazy Joe Gallo.
April 1972, 1 month after The Godfather premiered in theaters, and less than a year after Joe Colombo was shot in broad daylight, Joey Gallo had a problem. He knew what his perception was among those in the 5 families. He was nuts, crazy, a liability, and likely the man behind the killing of Joe Colombo.
Joey was always making trouble in that family. It just escalated after the Colombo shooting.
There's an open hit out on Joey Gallo after the Colombo hit. The Colombo family's gonna get revenge.
And the word was out that Gallo was gonna get hit. I mean, I heard that. And that's why they told me, again, afterwards, not to go down to Little Italy at all, because he was known to go down there quite a bit. They said, stay away from everybody. As a matter of fact, don't come into Brooklyn for a while, because they didn't know how far this was gonna go. You're on the Colombo side. And so whether he was at fault or not, he was going.
He knew that he was in danger. Revenge in one form or another was imminent. But at least on the surface, Joey Gallo didn't seem to care.
Everybody was telling Joey just to stay low, not to walk around so freely, because we know there's open hit. And Joey said, no, they ain't got the balls to do it. That's exactly what his expression was. They ain't got the balls to do it.
So Joey Gallo's basically walking around the streets of New York. He's kind of the Walking Dead. At the same time, in the wake of the Godfather movies, he's become a celebrity because the Godfather's a hit. And all of a sudden, society types in New York City want to start hanging out with the real gangsters, especially a gangster who's as erudite and intelligent as Crazy Joe Gallo. wow, these guys aren't really that bad. They're just on the other side of a system. So there's a sort of naive thinking in New York high society that makes Joey Gallo a bona fide celebrity.
Joey, would just disappear. He was running around the village, sightseeing, having coffee, talking to people. He would talk to anybody. He would just go up to you, hey, hello, hey, I'm Joey. He was very inquisitive that way and wanted to walk around and smell the roses and have a drink. Walk around and do what he wanted. He wasn't afraid.
Now, the problem is that you can't really be a media celebrity like Joey Gallo and still be in the mafia. They don't like that. He's gonna spill all the mafia secrets, this guy, and he just put a hit out on boss Columbo. They're gonna get him one way or another, and I think Joey Gallo starts to know this.
April 7th, 1972, Joe Gallo's 43rd birthday. Against the advice of his crew members, Crazy Joe threw a party for himself at the Copacabana, a who's who of entertainers and socialites. Gallo was traveling with a party of 5, his wife Sina, his stepdaughter Lisa, his sister Carmela, his bodyguard Pete the Greek, and Pete's girlfriend Edith. It was a big party, and news traveled fast among the wise guys out that night. Joey Gallo was a sitting duck.
Joey Gallo is celebrating his birthday. He's just recently married. He's with his new wife, his 10-year-old daughter, and they've got a huge night planned. Any other mobster at this point with all of the heat on him is probably gonna lay low, celebrate quietly at home, go out of town. Not Gallo. He goes to the Copacabana, very high profile, very easy to spot.
They had seen a show, and afterwards they went to Umberto's clam shop in Little Italy, 4:30 in the morning. A Columbo guy had to get permission to do something. A high official in the Columbo family gave the okay. And they went through the kitchen of the restaurant, and they just started shooting. Gallo got up, tried to get out of the Umberto's, crawled to the door, and got out to the street.
Staggers out and drops dead.
We got a call maybe 7:30, and he goes to kill Joey.
At about 5:30 this morning, it's the best that we can determine at the moment, an unidentified male walked in the side door, fired some shots, and then ran from the premises. Joe Gallo is dead, DOA, at Beekman Downtown Hospital.
A man walked in from the back door, and he walked up the side of the table. He fired 3 shots. He hit Joe twice, and he hit his bodyguard, Pete the Greek, 1 time.
No one knew really nothing until Pete the Greek got out of hospital. Pete the Greek was bodyguarding Joe that night, and Pete got shot in the ass, got arrested, but he went to the hospital, made bail, and got called right down to President Street. Who shot Joey? Pete the Greek turned around and said, Sonny Pinto did.
When you have that breakdown in the official rules of the mafia, it's easier to let anything slide. Instead of doing something in a way that's not going to affect the family, this is now just commonplace. You can kill someone in front of their wife and child, and that's an accepted part of doing business with the mob. The period of the 1970s, the continued violence that we see in New York, in a lot of ways becomes the undoing of these traditional mafia families.
The funeral for Joe Gallo was a scene. The sister roared out on the church steps in New York City would run red with blood over what happened to her brother.
A lot of people were there. A lot of people were hurting, a lot of people were mad. Joey was loved in the neighborhood. He was very generous. He was liked, Joey.